Hello, everyone. My name is Angela Lee. I'm from Hong Kong. I'm the founder and director of A.L Consulting. I'm from the Leadership and Transformation Committee from the Hong Kong chapter. And the topic I'm very pleased to share is about sustaining and urgency, the art of constructive, fast decision-making. And why I choose this topic, I think it's so important these days. And sustainability is one of my key words for my organization, is to create a sustainable future through people, interventions, and strategies. Really want to relate back to a pandemic that we recently have overcome, and it's COVID. And I would love to use this as an analogy to explain how in today's environment, we can really make very fast, sustainable decision in a very effective and competitive environment. Without further ado, let's go to the next slide of today's topic. If you look at this slide, it actually shows you a model for doing decision-making in a sustainable way. And why I say that this is a sustainable model, I'm adopting a model from Ken Wilber, which is an American philosopher. And this is talking about the whole systemic approach. If you look at a decision-making, especially in this very volatile, uncertain, market, we can make a fast decision. Fast doesn't mean wrong or irrational. It can still be rational with basis. And if you look at this quadrant, this 4 quadrant represents 4 different areas when we make decisions. For example, if you look at the top left quadrant, a lot of times we need to ask ourselves why we make a decision. What is standing behind that decision making? The values, the beliefs, our mindset, our passion. What do we stand for? What do we believe in? And what do we feel most important in our decision making? And if you go to the next quadrant with the right, top right, is the how. If we know the why, but we need to know how we're going to make that decision. What basis we are making them on? What are our KPIs? How can we use our behaviors to drive our decision making? What are the skills, knowledge required to make that decision? And of course, our experience. And the bottom left is who. Who stands for, who we are as a person and our relationship to others, including our teams, the dynamics of the team, the people, and also a lot of times, the culture of the company will also determine how we make the decision. And in the last quadrant, which is the bottom right, is the what question. It's more about the policies, the guidelines, the overall macro environment, the data that we collect, the infrastructure we have, and the technology. So those are more the external and collective kind of environment. So the top 2 quadrant, you can look at it as more individual self, as well as how yourself, explicitly behave and be seen and shown to others in terms of behavior and your skills and experience. The lower quadrant, the 2 bottom quadrant, is more the collective, because we know no matter whether we work for ourselves or we are working collectively as an organization, we don't really make decisions on our own. We really make our decision based on the different facts, data, people, our interrelationship, the dynamics, and also a lot of times we have underlying value, our beliefs and our passion, what we want to drive for, what's the intent, plus how we're going to really explicitly make that decision to outside world or to the others. So this is more of like a holistic perspective of how we can have a model to make our quick decision, and rather than we are single-minded or single track on just one areas. And especially in today's world with the big data, analytics, and all those things that we can gather, we might be able to draw a lot of references from the data analytics that we have collected for our company, for our industry, for the work that we are doing. And then from those, we can draw insights. And those insights can drive our decision as well. So if we could always ask ourselves the why, how, who, what, those questions, plus the analytics of our big data that we gathered, the trends that we are seeing, the insights, the patterns that we are seeing, we would be able to make I would say, a rational but yet fast, effective decision without feeling too much risk, without feeling that we have no fact base, without feeling that there's no foundation to the way we think. And because I'm a coach, as you know, I tend to ask a lot of open questions. And that's why I have created this model, which is also a model I tend to use with my clients and with organizations, especially when they're looking forward to what's next. How can they think differently? And what do they need to do in terms of the decision making? I can then ask questions all around those quadrants to enable my counterpart, my clients, or my stakeholders, or other organizations to think broadly from a 360 angle, which we call a whole system or systemic kind of intelligence. So that's basically how I draw this model out to help people to make really fast decisions, especially when you are under crisis, like what we have experienced in the last 2 or 3 years, the COVID. So as I mentioned, this talk is about, sustaining, the quick decision, and yet in the longer term, how can we sustain that? And I would love to use acronyms. Besides the model you can draw on from my last slide in terms of that whole system, COVID also gave me a very humbling experience. If you look at it, nobody on this planet had not experienced or being affected by COVID, by this pandemic, which is basically transparent, intangible. You can't touch it, see it, feel it. It's up in the air. But nobody, no matter where you are, who you are, whether you are of authority, of status, of wisdom, you still can be affected. So that's why I said it's a humbling experience. And if I use the word COVID to draw out some of my leadership qualities that I leverage on during this crisis, or when we need to build our resilience and agility, I think first thing, the C stands for care. Care for others, care for self. And you need to not just care for yourself, you need to care for your team, your people in the organization, and care for the community, the society at large, and also the world. O stands for optimism. People say you need to build resilience when you're under crisis. You need to be positive. But end of the day, is our optimism, how we feel about ourselves and the situation. Are we looking at half glass empty or half glass full? So the growth mindset to make us feel that no matter what we go through, eventually there will be light out of the tunnel. So as a leader, I think one of the qualities you need to inspire your team is to stay positive, stay optimistic at all times. If you can't do that, you can't expect your followers to follow lead or to really be able to build that momentum. The third letter word stands for V, and to me, of course, stands for values. In moment of crisis or decision making, as I've mentioned in my last slide on the top left quadrant, values is something we have built in ever since we are young, from our family, from our upbringing, from our education, from our culture, from our country. And all those values are actually guiding principle or a compass to all our own decision-making or decision-making for others, for the organization. So that's why I think values will embed within this leadership in crisis moment. You will really have those as your kind of guiding light or cornerstone for what you want to decide on and move next step. I is infrastructure. Infrastructure is very broad, meaning the big data, the technology, the IT system, the finance system, the policies, all those I would say sit underneath the bottom right quadrant in the last slide, if you remember. And the infrastructure is also the more of the objective analysis, the big data, the facts, the information, the statistics, the research, all the information we can draw upon to make our decision as leaders, especially during crisis, and how readily available those data become, or the infrastructure can be effective, can be up and running for the situation is utmost important. So that is I would say, the backbone of what we can put together in terms of our own analytics. And the last letter, D, stands for drive. What really drives you in making those decisions? What is the ultimate objective or intent for that decision making? Short term, medium term, long term. You need to know the why, the intent behind it. And the drive is also something related to not just the head, but the heart. What really motivates you? Do you also have a heart commitment? Meaning you are fully aware of what you're doing and you're fully committed as a leader. No matter what happens, you stay true to yourself. You stay true to your values. You stay true to your decision. And I think that COVID altogether would be some of the qualities or competencies or the overall perspective of how you can really make a sustainable decision, a fast decision, but yet is sustainable in an urgency or in crisis. So this is about my talk for today. And I think for me, I took the pandemic and the COVID as something more of a half glass full, as a growth opportunity for myself, because I learned so much about family, love for myself, love for others. And also, I really appreciate the fact that because of today's technology, my work didn't stop at all, almost. I did quite a lot of virtual learning and training and even coaching without even meeting my clients or the organization face to face. But yet, learning never stops. So that is my key takeaway. But at the same time, I also realized that, we need to love the planet. We need to love one another. And the fact that we need to continue to stay hungry, stay foolish. This is 4-letter words borrowed from Steve Jobs that I always love to use, because that gives me that sense of learning. And also the fact that we need to always stay humble and we need to stay curious in order to really leverage what we have, learn from one another, so that we can build a better community, build better next generation leaderships. And in terms of my company offering, as I mentioned, I do a lot of work about coaching, helping leaders, especially women leaders, to thrive, to really ride over the crisis, the challenges, and to become a better leader. Because if you imagine the top leaders can be effective, the ripple effect is tremendous. How many more lives can they impact and influence? And also the fact that, they are the role model for next generation leaderships. And I think leadership is now in a much broader term. I would love to really focus more on coaching. I would love to really even write another book, depending on how things go. But it's purely on coaching leadership that I can offer on individual basis, team basis, group basis, as well as organizational basis. And I love to share my diverse experience with my clients, how they can build a sustainable human capital policy or strategy so that they can retain talents, especially for the future world that we are going to work in the longer run. So I hope this will benefit the TLC member. And again, I really feel privileged and honored to be here to share about this important topic in a creative way. So thank you to DLC and to Mr. Jimmy Mistry. Thank you.